Hi everyone, my name is Rose Barocchini. I am in Human Physiology Bio 18 at Merced College. My presentation today is going to be about how the synthetic hormones in your birth control pill may be increasing your risk of diseases. I've spent the last few weeks of this summer course looking through many research articles, and I've concluded that we don't fully understand what all the effect is that birth control has on women's bodies. To give you some background information, hormonal contraceptives have not even been on the market for 100 years. They were first introduced to prevent pregnancy in the 1960s. That was revolutionary. Hormonal contraceptives to prevent pregnancy was revolutionary. It gave women control, it gave them power, it gave them freedom over their fertility. This allowed women to be able to obtain careers such as their male counterparts, since they no longer had to worry about getting pregnant, going through a pregnancy, and then caring for children. What I want you to remember through this presentation is my findings have allowed me to come to the conclusion that hormonal contraception is a trade-off, meaning that it is very effective at preventing pregnancy, but at what cost? This presentation is going to go through some of those costs to women's bodies. The goal of this presentation is to show you what research there is and what kind of risks there are and are capable of affecting our body, and to allow you to make informed decisions. It's always a good idea to know the knowledge. To be able to understand what the risks are of the synthetic hormones in our birth control, we must first understand the role of natural sex hormones, the role of estrogen and progesterone, and why they are necessary and why we have them. So estradiol is the natural endogenous version of estrogen. There's many other estrogens in the human body, but we're going to focus on estradiol because that is the variation that is intended to be replicated by the synthetic version in the birth control pill. Estrogen is produced by women's ovaries. It's also found in adrenal glands and in adipose cells. But estrogen is under the control of follicle-stimulating hormone from the anterior pituitary. Progesterone is another sex hormone that is formed by the corpus luteum. And the corpus luteum is the structure that is after ovulations. It is the remaining emptied follicle that has just experienced ovulation, and that is the structure that makes progesterone. Both of these sex hormones work together and create our menstrual cycle. So around day 4 of the menstrual cycle, both estrogen and progesterone will be at their lowest. The low levels of both of these hormones signals the anterior pituitary, signals the hypothalamus to stimulate the anterior pituitary to secrete follicle-stimulating hormone. That will then act on the ovaries to secrete estrogen. Estrogen will rise, and you will go through the menstrual cycle called the follicular stage. You will have a increase in luteinizing hormone from the anterior pituitary, and then that signals the ovulation. And then once ovulation has occurred, that empty follicle will then go on to start producing more progesterone and become the corpus luteum. And that is what will make the menstrual cycle. Here's also a great graphic that I found online comparing these hormones so you can see when they're at their peak and how they influence our menstrual cycle. You can see that estrogen is highest during the follicular phase, and then that rise in luteinizing hormone at ovulation. And then we see the rise in progesterone during the luteal phase, and that is from the corpus luteum secreting that progesterone. Okay, so in my reading, looking at many research articles, I found that there are links to cardiovascular disease. There are links of hormonal contraceptives being correlated to some cardiovascular disease. So research has found a causative relationship between hormonal contraceptives increasing the amount of circulating triglycerides and low-density lipoprotein, LDL, cholesterol. It is known that cardiovascular disease can be caused by high circulating triglycerides and LDL, which is the bad cholesterol. Hormonal contraceptives also increased HDL cholesterol levels. These are the quote-unquote good cholesterol, but not as significant as the increase seen with LDL cholesterol. One study in specific studied a vast number of metabolic processes, and it showed that many levels of the products of these metabolic processes increased, being omega-3 fatty acids, being insulin, being sex hormone binding globulin. There was many things that increased. So it could have been good things, being HDL cholesterol levels, but there was a significant increase in the risk factors, being the LDL cholesterols and the circulating triglycerides. This can be most important to understand if you are already at risk, if you already have high circulating triglycerides in your body, whether that's from your disease, whether that's from genetics. This is important to know that hormonal contraceptives can further increase and therefore further put you at risk. One study included all adolescent participants during a time when they are at most risk to engage in other risky behaviors that correlate to heart disease, such as smoking, consuming alcohol, and eating fatty foods. This is sort of what I just explained about these findings being really important to someone if they already are at high risk for cardiovascular disease, whether that's from their environment or from their genetics. Thrombosis. Thrombosis is unnecessary platelet coagulation within the blood vessels that could possibly lead to a blood clot and therefore possibly lead to a heart attack. Hormonal contraceptives contribute to an increase of procoagulants in the blood and a decrease of anticoagulants in the blood. Procoagulants and anticoagulants work together in a normal process. Coagulation of the blood by platelets and other clotting factors is a necessary mechanism to maintain homeostasis. If there's an injury of the blood vessel, we get a cut. We need those clotting factors and the platelets to coagulate at the site of the incision so we can stop blood loss. The research, however, has showed that hormonal contraceptives, even in the absence of damage to the blood vessels, increase the amount of procoagulants while they decrease the amount of anticoagulants. Activated protein C in the blood is a known anticoagulant, and studies show that users of hormonal contraception show a resistance to activated protein C. And this mechanism is what researchers think contributes the most to the risk of thrombosis by those who take hormonal contraceptives. Links to breast cancer. Research findings show a 20% increased risk for breast cancer for women currently using or who have recently used hormonal contraceptives. The good news, women showed the same breast cancer risk as non-hormonal contraceptive users after just 5 years of ending hormonal birth control. This again goes back to we don't know the long-term effects. We haven't studied women for over 100 years to be able to account for long durations of hormonal birth control use. Estrogen interaction with certain breast cancer cells results in proliferation of the breast cancer cells. So my findings, after reading through many of the research, like I had mentioned, I believe that using hormonal contraceptives is a trade-off. Hormonal contraceptives are very effective at preventing pregnancy and are very freeing and liberating to women, but there are costs. I think that the knowledge of the risks associated with birth control should be counseled to all women, including adolescents, who will be able to make the informed decision about their options with birth control. I think that counseling, after knowing the findings, I think that counseling is absolutely necessary to ensure that no serious health issues arise because of birth control usage. And I think that healthcare providers should be required to conduct this continuous monitoring of hormonal contraceptive users. I think after knowing how potentially hazardous it is to your health, that would be absolutely necessary. Thank you for listening in. I appreciate it, and I hope that you learned a little bit something from my presentation. Thank you.